In Section 4, we dive into real-world lessons from some of the most infamous breaches and patching failures in recent history. We'll look at WannaCry, Equifax, Log4j, LastPass, and NotPetya, 4 cases where poor patching practices had devastating results. These examples aren't just technical slip-ups. They reveal how delays or missed patches can lead to massive financial losses, regulatory fines, and lasting reputational harm. By studying what went wrong, you'll see how a stronger patching strategy could have prevented or reduced the impact of these incidents. The goal of this section is simple: to help you learn from the mistakes of others, so your organization doesn't become the next headline breach. Patch management lessons are best understood through real-world examples. In this section, we'll examine 5 major incidents: WannaCry, Equifax, Log4j, NotPetya, and LastPass. Each of these cases demonstrates how missing or delaying a patch can cascade into massive consequences: financial losses, reputational harm, and even global disruption. By looking closely at what went wrong, we can identify the common patterns and extract clear lessons. These stories serve as both cautionary tales and practical guidance, showing why patching is more than a technical chore. It's a business-critical safeguard. WannaCry began with a simple but devastating oversight: an unpatched flaw in Microsoft's server message block protocol, tracked as MS-17-010. Microsoft had released a patch in March 2017, but by May, a large number of organizations had failed to apply it. That gap gave attackers the perfect opening. Once exploited, the ransomware was able to spread from one vulnerable system to the next, moving rapidly across internal networks and even across the internet. What's important to recognize is that this was not a 0-day. The fix was available. The real failure was a breakdown in patch management discipline. The impact of WannaCry was immediate and global. In just a matter of days, the ransomware reached over 200,000 systems across more than 150 countries. Hospitals in the UK were forced to shut down systems, cancel appointments, and even divert emergency patients. At the same time, large enterprises like FedEx and Maersk were crippled, with Maersk alone reporting losses in the hundreds of millions as their global shipping operations were brought to a halt. Governments and businesses scrambled to contain the outbreak, but by then the damage had already been done. WannaCry showed how quickly a missed patch could escalate from a technical problem into a worldwide crisis. The key lesson from WannaCry is that missed patches equal massive risk. Every organization that had applied the March update was protected, but those that didn't were left exposed. This was not a sophisticated 0-day exploit. It was an entirely preventable failure. The outbreak demonstrates that patching is not just an IT task to check off a list. It is a business-critical safeguard. Falling behind on patching puts financial stability, customer trust, and even human safety at risk. WannaCry remains one of the clearest examples of how neglecting the basics can open the door to catastrophic outcomes. The Equifax breach of 2017 stemmed from a vulnerability in Apache struts, tracked as CVE 2017-5638. A patch had been released in March, but Equifax failed to apply it to a critical web application. By May, attackers were actively exploiting the flaw, and over the following months they maintained access to Equifax's systems without being detected. The breach was ultimately revealed in September, but by then, attackers had siphoned off massive amounts of sensitive personal data. This was another example of a patch being available in time, but organizational processes breaking down. The scale of the Equifax breach was staggering. Attackers accessed the personal data of over 147 million people, including names, social security numbers, birth dates, and in some cases driver's license and credit card details. The fallout was immense. Widespread identity theft concerns, public outrage, and a collapse of trust in Equifax as one of the 3 major credit bureaus. Financially, the company faced more than $700 million in fines and settlements. Operationally, executives were called before Congress, and the brand was permanently tarnished. All of this stemmed from a single missed patch. The lesson from Equifax is clear. Delayed patching creates exposure, and when sensitive data is involved, the stakes are enormous. Compliance frameworks alone weren't enough to protect Equifax. Their processes still failed. The breach highlighted the need for strong asset management, rapid patch deployment, and continuous monitoring. It also underscored that organizations holding sensitive personal data have a higher responsibility to act quickly. Equifax showed the world that a single missed patch can trigger not only financial damage, but also long-lasting reputational harm and loss of customer trust. The Log4j vulnerability, known as Log4Shell, was disclosed in December 2021 and quickly became one of the most critical security issues of the decade. The flaw existed in the widely used Log4j Java logging library, enabling attackers to execute code remotely by sending specially crafted input. Because Log4j was embedded in countless applications and services, the exposure was nearly universal. Within hours of disclosure, attackers worldwide were scanning for and exploiting vulnerable systems, leaving defenders racing to identify and patch affected assets. The impact was immediate. Organizations across the globe, from small businesses to cloud giants, scrambled to locate every instance of Log4j in their environments. The challenge was compounded because Log4j was often buried deep inside third-party software or custom applications. Security teams faced pressure to patch or mitigate systems quickly, while attackers automated scans to exploit the flaw. Although not all compromises led to major breaches, the sheer scale of exposure made Log4Shell one of the most disruptive vulnerabilities in modern history. The key lesson from Log4j is that visibility is everything. Organizations that had strong asset inventories and vulnerability management processes could react quickly. Those without struggled to even identify where they were exposed. The incident also highlighted the risk of software supply chains, where open-source components can become entry points for attackers. Finally, Log4j reinforced that speed matters. The faster you can detect, patch, or mitigate, the lower your risk of becoming the next headline. NotPetya struck in June 2017, initially disguised as ransomware, but later revealed to be a destructive wiper. It spread through a compromised update to a popular Ukrainian accounting software, then rapidly across networks using the same Eternal Blue exploit seen in WannaCry. Unlike WannaCry, however, NotPetya's goal wasn't ransom collection but widespread destruction. Once inside, it crippled systems by encrypting master boot records, rendering machines completely unusable. The damage was catastrophic. NotPetya caused an estimated $10 billion in global losses, making it one of the most costly cyber incidents in history. Maersk's shipping operations were disrupted worldwide, FedEx subsidiaries were paralyzed, and pharmaceutical giant Merck lost production capacity. Recovery often took weeks or months, with many organizations forced to rebuild thousands of machines from scratch. Unlike traditional ransomware, paying the ransom wasn't an option. The malware was designed to destroy, not recover. The NotPetya outbreak highlighted multiple lessons. Timely patching could have prevented the SMB exploit, but network segmentation and backup resilience were equally critical. Organizations learned that destructive malware can spread at nation-state scale, affecting businesses with no direct connection to the conflict in Ukraine. The key takeaway: patch management alone isn't enough. Organizations must combine it with layered defenses and resilient recovery strategies. The LastPass breach unfolded over several months, beginning in 2022, when attackers exploited a vulnerable DevOps system to gain access. From there, they launched a multi-stage intrusion, ultimately stealing encrypted password vault backups from the company's cloud storage. While customer master passwords were not exposed, the breach represented a serious compromise of trust for one of the world's leading password managers. The direct technical impact was limited by encryption, but the reputational damage was significant. Customers were forced to change master passwords and rotate stored credentials, and security experts raised concerns about the safety of relying on centralized password managers. For LastPass, the long-standing trust it had built with millions of users was badly shaken, and competitors seized the opportunity to lure customers away. The LastPass incident underscores the importance of vendor risk management. Even if customers patch diligently, they remain vulnerable if their providers do not. Development and DevOps systems are attractive targets and must be patched and monitored as rigorously as production environments. Finally, transparency matters. LastPass faced criticism for how it communicated the breach, showing that trust is not only about technical controls, but also about honesty and speed in disclosure. Section 4.1 examined real-world case studies that highlight the consequences of poor patch management. We looked at incidents such as WannaCry, the Equifax breach, Log4j, NotPetya, and LastPass. Each demonstrated how delays or failures in applying patches can lead to massive disruption, financial loss, and reputational damage. The common theme across these examples is that the vulnerabilities were known and patches, or mitigations, were available, yet organizations failed to act quickly or effectively. These case studies serve as reminders that patching is not just a technical task, it's a business-critical function. Learning from past failures helps us build stronger, more disciplined patching programs that prevent history from repeating itself. Section 4.2 looks at the common themes behind major patching failures. The case studies of WannaCry, Equifax, Log4j, NotPetya, and LastPass show very different types of incidents: ransomware outbreaks, massive data breaches, supply chain compromises, and destructive malware. But despite the differences, they share patterns that reveal where organizations often falter. Recognizing these themes is essential to understanding how patching failures escalate into crises and, more importantly, how to prevent them from happening again. The most striking theme across major incidents is the delay between when patches were released and when organizations applied them. For example, Microsoft issued the MS-17-010 patch 2 months before WannaCry and NotPetya spread, yet thousands of systems were still unpatched. Equifax also failed to apply the Apache Struts patch, even after regulators highlighted the risk. These delays created a wide window of opportunity for attackers. The root causes often include lack of urgency, competing business priorities, or insufficient staffing. The lesson is clear. Critical patches, especially on internet-facing systems, must be fast-tracked with defined timelines to reduce exposure. Another common theme is poor asset visibility. Equifax didn't have a full inventory of where Apache Struts was deployed, which left vulnerable systems unpatched. During the Log4j crisis, many organizations faced the same problem, struggling to locate where the vulnerable library was embedded across applications. Without accurate asset inventories, even the best patching processes fail. Blind spots often come from legacy systems, shadow IT, and decentralized software procurement. The key lesson is that continuous asset discovery and inventory are prerequisites for effective patch management. A third common theme is inadequate testing and change management. Many organizations delay patching out of fear that updates will break critical applications. While that concern is valid, it often results in excessive delays. In many cases, testing environments were missing, outdated, or not representative of production, leading to either reckless patching or indefinite postponement. The real problem was testing bottlenecks, weak rollback planning, and lack of automation. The lesson is clear. Representative test environments and documented rollback procedures allow organizations to patch faster while still maintaining safety and stability. A fourth theme is weak governance and accountability. At Equifax, the failure to patch Apache Struts wasn't just technical, it was organizational, with major breakdowns in communication and ownership. In the WannaCry and NotPetya outbreaks, many organizations had no clear accountability for ensuring that critical updates were deployed. The root cause was often split responsibilities between IT and security teams with little coordination. The lesson is that strong governance is essential. Clear roles, executive oversight, and enforced policies are required to make sure patching doesn't fall through the cracks. The fifth theme is the underestimation of exploitation speed. Many organizations assumed they had more time than they actually did. In the case of Log4j, exploit code was circulating within hours of disclosure. WannaCry spread worldwide in less than a day. Too often, IT leaders relied on outdated assumptions about attacker timelines. The lesson is clear. Exploitation now happens in days or even hours, not months. Patch management strategies must adapt to this accelerated pace if organizations want to stay ahead of attackers. Another theme is over-reliance on traditional perimeters. Many breached organizations assumed that firewalls or network boundaries would protect vulnerable systems. But once malware or attackers gained a foothold, they moved laterally inside the network, bypassing those defenses. The mistake was relying too heavily on perimeters instead of layered protections. The lesson is that patching must be combined with defense in depth, segmentation, monitoring, and layered security controls to limit attacker movement and reduce risk. The final theme is cultural and resource barriers. In many organizations, patching was seen as routine maintenance rather than a strategic safeguard. Teams were overburdened, underfunded, and lacked executive backing. In that environment, patching consistently lost out to short-term business priorities. The real problem was that patching lacked visibility at the executive level and wasn't framed in business terms. The lesson is that patch management must be elevated to a business priority with leadership support and proper resources to ensure it isn't deprioritized. Section 4.2 showed that patching failures are rarely just technical, they are systemic and organizational. Attackers don't rely on obscure flaws. They exploit predictable lapses in process, governance, and accountability. Themes like patch delays, poor asset visibility, weak testing, governance gaps, cultural barriers, and misplaced reliance on perimeters all reveal where organizations fall short. The lesson is clear. By recognizing and addressing these recurring themes, organizations can dramatically lower their chances of suffering the same high-profile failures.